Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal peoples of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast, and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. Hi everyone, I'm Tahnee Cook and welcome to my podcast, Chuffed. Some of you may know me as the girl who got married to a stranger on TV, which thankfully worked out, and now I'm here chatting with you all on my podcast. And you're probably wondering what this podcast is about. Chuffed is your unfiltered safe space for all things love, career and life. Join me each week as we unpack relationships and dating, a dash of pop culture, and have fun conversations with cool people. In this episode, I chat with Alyssa from my season of Married at First Sight. Alyssa has probably been one of my most requested MAFS cast members to have on the show, and I was so excited to sit down and chat with her. So Alyssa has been fairly quiet these past few months after MAFS has finished airing, and I really wanted to give her a safe space and opportunity to share her experience on the show and shed light on her truth. We had such a long chat, so this will have to be a few parts, but in this part we start from the wedding, chat about the retreat, a deep dive into where things went south for the relationship, and just some general behind the scenes of MAFS. I hope you enjoyed this episode and wanted to ask if you could please keep an open mind while hearing Alyssa's side of events. She's taken her time with speaking up, so I hope you can show her some support. Let's get started.
It's been a while since I've been in front of cameras.
You read my notes? Wait. I'm nervous. No, it's going to be good.
No, it's going to be so good.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Chuffed podcast. I have a very, very special guest today. I have Alyssa.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
So I actually had quite a few requests for you early on when I did like a question box on my Instagram. It's like, who should I have on? I had a lot for you. And yeah, I think a lot of events have happened in the last couple week or so. And I really wanted to bring Alyssa on just to kind of chat through the MAFS experience, what's happened afterwards, and kind of really just share her truth. Because I feel Alyssa's been quite quiet through this whole process. I think there's obviously reasons to that, but now we're all kind of speaking up about everything.
Yeah, now I am unhinged in the best
Unhinged
way.
era.
I feel like I wasn't emotionally or mentally ready to even talk about the experience straight after.
Totally.
And then once it started airing, I was like, okay, now I'm really mentally unwell. And if I had spoken about it when I was in that headspace, I wouldn't have been able to articulate myself and to take the emotions out of it and just kind of speak from my soul rather than from the high emotion that I was getting. But now I'm ready.
Yeah.
I am ready to speak my truth. And I don't want people to think that I'm like a victim complex, because I got that a lot when I was being trolled. Like, you're just playing the victim. And I'm like, it's my truth.
Yeah.
Like, I'm allowed to have a voice and to speak up about what's been done and what I went through and how I was feeling, put context to the reactions, the overreactions.
Yes, because there's always context, guys. There's always context.
And all of it was left out. So filling in the pieces, filling in the gaps, and finally speaking my truth. And I feel very comfortable with you. I have not done basically any media. There's been a lot of people that are like, come on the podcast. And I'm just like, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And so now when, I was chatting with you, I was like, nah, now's the perfect time. And I'm ready to speak my truth.
I saw a few questions being like, why is she speaking up now? Why is she saying anything now? And I think every time I would see Alyssa say anything, it would just like cop a lot of backlash in the media, in comment section. People just always were dismissive of your feelings and your truth. And I feel like that was probably one of the reasons why you haven't said anything, because I feel now like people are starting to be like, oh, Alyssa's actually like pretty cool. She's a bit of it. She's, not what I thought she was on TV. And they're kind of like, oh, okay, maybe she isn't crazy.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm a little bit crazy. Let's get that straight.
We're all crazy.
But no, that's true. I think that's spot on. I feel like afterwards, no matter what I said or what I did, it would turn into something negative. I would go out and get a coffee, and immediately a photo of me would be put on the internet and be like, where's her child? So it's like, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. And so now when people, finally, when we got our socials back, and I kind of just went back into everyday life, and they're like, oh, wait, she's completely different to the person that I thought she was on MAFS. On the daily, I get so many messages of people apologizing, saying, I am so sorry that, I had this horrible opinion of you. And I say to them, please never apologize, because that is exactly how production wanted you to feel.
Yeah.
So for me, it's almost like, thank you for taking the time and the energy of yourself to realize my true self.
Yeah.
And for me to kind of, just show you the person I am. I will put my hand up and say, did I do things and say things I'm not proud of on MAFS? 100 billion%. It was such an emotional time, and it's so amplified that you snap so quickly. And I'll be like, watching it back, which I haven't watched all of it, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I wouldn't have said that, or oh man, I shouldn't have treated that person that way. So did I do and say things I am not proud of? 100%. And I will hold myself accountable to that to this day. And I don't want to say but, I want to say and I will also say my truth, because there's so much context that is left out as to why I was reacting that way.
Totally. And I think people forget like the circumstances around situations. Like you guys are seeing such a small portion of conversations, and I think it's
1%.
Not necessarily like the edit in a sense of what is said, but it's how it's put together and the context that's missing. I always find that's the key thing, that people are like, okay, you said those words fine, but you didn't see what that person said to get you to that point. You didn't see the conversation leading up to that. You didn't see this. So it's really hard to cop that kind of sentiment, because it's like, well, no, you guys didn't see all of these events that then trickled you to react in a certain way. Because I definitely had my times of like reacting in ways that I didn't like, or I said some really shitty stuff, and I'm thankful none of it was used. Like honestly, like I could have looked a certain way too, but you just can't explain what it's like being in that environment and being pushed. You know, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're hungry, you're all of these things. You're going to act up in a certain way. Like I'm not trying to justify it, but I'm just trying to give context of.
It's much easier to snap when you're in that emotional state. And I get those questions a lot, right? I get those questions a lot, those statements rather, of people saying, you can't blame it on the edit when you said those words. And I'm like, I get it. I promise you, I get it. I hear you. I see you. But why do you think I'm acting that way?
Yeah.
Why do you think I have such a huge reaction? You're not seeing anything.
So much.
And also, I talk a lot, clearly. So I give them a lot of content to cut and chop and change. And, you know, I'm very emotive, and I'm very, you know, just kind of say what's on my mind all the time. Like I'm just very unapologetically, that is me. And, you know, other people that are in reality TV, sometimes they might not have as much content or have as much peace in the play.
Totally.
Because they don't say a lot.
And also not forgetting that, because we've spoke about this, but the laws in Australia is quite different with what can be chopped and changed for reality TV. So like sometimes conversations, which is it Frankenbiting? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Conversations that aren't in that conversation are mashed together. And it happened to me a lot of times, like not anything that was like super detrimental to my edit, but it was like, oh, I didn't say that in that in that conversation, or that's not what that was. So it was very hard to see certain things that was like, that is not the conversation that I recall, and I was there in real life, and I experienced that, and then seeing how it was pieced together, it's so different.
Yeah. And that's what I'm pretty vocal about that. I have been working with Nick Thompson in the UCAN Foundation. He was on Love is Blind in the US, and now he's being a big advocate for reality TV stars.
Yeah, I think it's great what they're doing.
Yes, both post and during stars that are in reality TV, because we do not have the same rights as normal actors and actresses. We don't have mental health support, which we can speak on that, about the mental health support on MAFS. And they can literally do whatever they want. I know a lot of the laws in the UK have changed because trigger warning. Unfortunately, a lot of lives have been lost due to editing and due to bullying. And so UK were like, okay, let's change that. And that is why MAFS UK is not as popular as MAFS Australia, because it's quote unquote boring. Yeah. Because they can't edit whatever they want. So to be honest, if they would set up cameras like Big Brother, I think you and Mel said this,
100%.
and just had like 24 rolling footage, it would be such a different story. And I'm telling you, it would be just as entertaining. They can make ethical and entertaining content and reality TV shows that protects the reality stars, that is still just as entertaining for viewers, but ethically done.
Yeah, I agree totally. It's, there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize, like when I was watching Nick's content, it was like, think about all the reality TV shows in the world and all the reality stars that have come, stars, whatever you want to call it. I know people get triggered by saying stars.
Yeah. I don't like saying stars either. Like contributors is what we were called.
Yeah, like think about like all the seasons of every single show. Like there's so many people, and you just don't realize like what it does to people's lives and how it affects them. And, you know, and people come off far worse rather than better. I would say the vast majority don't come off good.
Yes.
Let's be real.
And it's interesting because I got, I put up like a, not gonna lie, like anonymous question box the other day, and people are like, if you had anxiety, why did you go on the show? And I'm like, I'm sorry, just because I have a mental illness and anxiety, are you saying that I'm not allowed to do anything in this world?
Say a lot of people have anxiety, so it's quite... That's quite a harsh thing to say, because I would say a lot of people in the world are more vocal about it now. Maybe it was more secretive, I guess, years ago. But it's a discussion people are having. And so just because we have, you know, a bit of mental health,
we're not allowed to go on TV.
Yeah,
that's not right. We should be able to go on TV, but we should also have that support.
Yeah,
when we're 100%. Feeling unwell.
All right, so I wanted to chat about first impressions.
Love it.
First impressions of all the girls. I did this with Mel. All the girls on the hens night. What your experience was going into the hens, starting filming. What was your kind of headspace at, and what did you think meeting everyone? Where were you kind of at? Because I was so overwhelmed, and I'm so keen to get your thoughts.
Overwhelmed that I probably overdrank, and I think that's why they didn't.
You were not in it, dude.
I don't think that's why they didn't show anything of me, because I was too drunk to be on TV. But I was really excited. I was poached for MAFS, so I had a producer slide into my DMs on my baking account, and they're like, "Hey, are you single?" And yes, Alyssa bakes cakes. Promo. They're like, "Oh, are you single? Are you looking for love?" And I'm like, "What the F is this shit?" Like, no. And I was like, you know what? Like, I called my mom and I was like, "Mom, what do I do?" And she's like,
shout out to Deb. We
Shout
love
out to Deb. Deb, my angel in disguise. She's like, "Alyssa, if the universe is opening this portal full of glitter and stars and lights, like, you have to at least do it." And 2022 was my yes year, and I was just saying yes to everything. And I was like, all right, what's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst case scenario?
So I was like, look, I'll go through the process. I was very hesitant to do it because I had boycotted MAFS from the season with Bryce and Melissa, because I saw how toxic that was portrayed.
Sure.
And I want to put an emphasis on portrayed, because I know that they have come out and been like, that was not the case. Right. And so I was like, nah, not watching it. So I didn't watch Olivia's season. And then I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Famous last words. And so, yeah, it went in full speed ahead. I was like, I'm going to give this my all. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I obviously have a young child. He is. And I feel like people don't understand, like, he's a baby, right? Like, he's 3.
Yeah.
So in order for me, as a single mom, it's already hard enough to, like, put your guilt aside to be like, I'm going to do something for myself. Like, I deserve love, and I deserve to find somebody that is going to love me, and I have a lot of love to give. And so, yeah, leaving him was really, really tough. I was thankful that Deb was able to come over from the US to help look after him for a few months. So that was good.
Which I think is beautiful for her to get to spend time with him. Like, I think that's so really, really nice.
Yes.
She could have had that as well. Because Alyssa was also, you were still going, so you got the weekends off.
Yes.
And you would go and spend time.
I would.
I don't know, because I'm so used to saying child, because basically Leon, we were not allowed to say Leon's name.
We were not allowed to say Leon's
on TV.
Name. I did not want to say Leon's name on TV for protection. Yeah. And it's also why I don't show him in my socials, just because he is a tiny little baby.
And that's how child
became
a thing.
I think there was like a Reddit thread or something that was like a conspiracy theory that I didn't even have a child. And I was like, guys, please. I can't wait to tell him when he grows up, you were so famous before.
Seriously.
Like, people didn't even think you were real. But no, I told MAFS, I said, if I'm going to go on it, I want every single weekend off where I can go home and spend time with him. And they were, at first they were like, which weekends? And I'm like, every weekend, every single one. Thank you. But yeah, going back to the first impressions at the hens party, I remember in my car on the way there. So they don't tell you when you go into reality TV how much waiting around there is.
Don't even get me started.
You have to get ready at like midday. And then we got we got taken to a taxi to like a hotel, and then we had to keep like doing laps around the hotel.
We got mic'd up at this random like Meriton.
Yes.
And it was so weird because the thing that makes it hard is that like there's no communication. So you're like,
none.
Is this a scam? Like what's going on? Where am I? Who are these people?
Are they about to take my kidney?
Am I being taken? Literally. It's just so mysterious.
Yes.
And you just kind of have to just like send it. You don't even know what's going on. And
you
you'll
just
be
trust all of it.
round and round and round, not even knowing where you were going. Like just trusting the process. And for me, that was the hardest because I can't let go of control.
Yeah.
And it was so weird to be like, I'm just chilling.
I'm the same.
What am I doing?
I'm the same. I was like, okay. I'm an executive assistant by trade. I'm still looking for a job if you want to hire me. I'm always in control of like schedules and everything in my whole life. And here I was just like, okay, let's just drive around for 3 hours and not even know where we are, and then keep asking you, how are you feeling? Yeah. So how are you feeling? How are you feeling about tonight? What's the vibe? And I was like, oh God. And literally I just kept being like, I just can't wait to eat some snacks. Like, I was so hungry. I remember being mic'd up and they had a whole bunch of snacks and I was like shoving them in my dress. I actually had maybe this is why they hate me, because I stole a Freddo frog that I literally tucked into my Spanx of my dress, because I knew that like, oh, is there going to be food there? Like, all I think about is like, when's the next time I'm going to have a snack? So I tucked it into my Spanx. It started melting. And so one of the producers was like, do you want me to hang on to that for you? And then I can give it to you like when you're able to eat it. And I was like, please give me my Freddo frog. Like I'm going to need that. So yes, I'm trusting you with my Freddo. And then I'm like 19 wines deep. But coming in, I think I was like maybe in the middle. And it was the same thing. Like you had to like get out of the car. Oh, can you do that again? Okay, get out. Oh, can you just do that again?
Get the feet now.
Yeah, it was the amount of times that you had to redo, and then you would wait, and then you would walk up the steps, and then you would wait at the steps. And then like I could kind of see in, and I was like, oh my God, this is such
all I
like
could hear was just women speaking.
Twilight Zone. Yeah. Twilight Zone. And so walking in, and I think Melinda said the same thing, like, are we on Love Island? Like, why is everybody so attractive and like boss bitch energy? Like everyone was just so like glowing and friendly, and I didn't get any catty vibes. Like it was just like, wow, we are all like in this, and this is so surreal. We're in like this mansion. Yeah. I don't even know where we were because we drove around the city. We could have been in freaking Queensland for all I know. But it was wild. I spent a lot of time with Sandy, and I spent a lot of time with Melissa, because I think we had right off the bat realized that we were like the older women in the group. And Melissa also had a child. And so, we can do a drinking game. How many times I say child? You'll be wasted by the end of this. And so, yeah, I spoke to Melinda a lot. I don't think you and I spoke too much.
No, we didn't speak at all.
But it was just, I remember when Expert Mel and Alessandra came in, and they had to do it like 3 times. And I was like, this is so weird. And you could see that they had like an earpiece, and they were like, like they just kind of like smile.
The
and, like,
awkward silences that they'd stand there and be like waiting for that reaction.
And I'm like, what am I like? What are we? Are we just like gonna laugh and like shake our head? But no, it was a surreal experience. First impressions, I couldn't remember anyone's name. I remember Lyndall knew every single person's name,
and I was like, write literally notes in my phone, and I was like, Alyssa Baker, like Mel. I think I wrote like eyebrows or something. Like I was literally like boom, 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 boom. And I because you couldn't have your phone right, so I had to remember like in my head who was who. And then like as soon as I got my phone back, I like wrote it down as I tried to stalk everyone, but you just couldn't.
You couldn't do it.
But actually, you and me were like the first 2 people that were leaked.
Yeah,
you're
remember?
Right. Yeah, and because you had obviously the baking account, people found you.
Yes.
But it was you and me, and then I think it was Claire.
Yeah.
But you and me were the first 2.
Because people were tagging me in my freaking Macca's photo. If we can just like stitch the Macca's photo. Okay, but let's
tell that.
Because at the end of filming, I was like, I'm hungry. Where is my Freddo frog? Where is my Freddo? And I think he was like, oh, sorry, I ate it. And I was like, this is not okay. I trusted you. This is when I should have known that I was going to be manipulated. I'm like, I trust you with my Freddo frog. Now what are you going to give me? I think he gave me like a dum-dum, or like, what do you guys call them here? Not a dum-dum. What are the little lollipops? The suckers? It's not a dum-dum. What are the tiny little like lollipops? No, it's like just a little like baby lollipop. The Chupa Chup.
Choppa chop. Yep.
And I was like, this ain't a Freddo frog. So mind you, I was starving. And I was like, taxi man, take me to Macca's. got the Macca's, followed all the way home.
By the paps.
Allie, I see you. And the most iconic photo of me with the Macca's, to this day, that is my favorite photo. Like, that is just quintessential Alyssa.
Yeah.
Like, give me McDonald's.
Macca's.
Pink dress, Macca's, like, half drunk face. And everyone started tagging me. And I was like, oh, shit, here we go. I was like, that's not me. Like, I can't say. People were like, I can't tell if this is you, but because you have McDonald's, that's you. So I love it. Iconic. And then, yeah, we had the briefing the next day. And that was, again, like, wild.
So
I remember
surreal.
Claire saying that she didn't even have a passport. She was getting married on the Monday.
So she was like calling the passport office being
Yeah.
like, my passport. Like,
Yeah.
it was so stressful. I was like, babe, you ain't getting that
Yeah.
passport.
And I think I got in trouble a lot on the hens night and at the briefing as well, because they're like, no talk of production.
Yeah.
And so I kept being like, when's your wedding? And they're like, Alyssa. And I was like, when's your wedding? And I like, kept trying to like talk through my teeth. Because I was just like keen to like get to know everyone and like see what everything was about. So that was crazy. And then we got like our little like phones and like our little like Kmart plaid bag to put everything in. And I was like, this is happening.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually happening. I'm on MAFS. What? And I thought the paparazzi was staged. Like, I thought,
Right.
I didn't think it was real, right? Like, when they're like taking photos, I was like, this is fake. Why?
Yeah,
like,
this
they
is
don't
a
even know
setup.
who, like, this is set up. And then I thought that we were going to come into the briefing and they were going to show us the pap photos and be like, this is, if you guys don't act properly, this is what's going to be on the internet.
Stop.
And then I was like, wait, this is real?
Because you were, I remember you freaking out because you were followed.
Yeah.
And then, because not all of us were papped. Like, a few of
No.
us, like missed it.
No.
And you were like, oh, shit, am I going to get in trouble for
followed
this?
me through Macca's.
Home.
And all the way home. Followed me through
It's a lot.
Macca's. It's a lot, but like iconic photo. Thanks, Allie.
Kind of right. And then you obviously had the wedding, which was beautiful.
Wedding was insane.
I loved the pink dress.
Oh, yes.
So iconic.
So I've been married before. Everyone, I think, knows this by now. So I told my MAFS producer, I said, I wanted initially, I knew I wanted a pink dress and I wanted all of my bridesmaids in white. So kind of like an opposite effect. And they're like, no, we can't do white. And I was like, whatever.
Classic.
And so if you guys don't know, you pick 3 dresses and then they choose the one that's going to be like the final dress.
Yeah.
And so I picked the one that I found. Shout out to Wollongong Northern Beaches Boutique. Wait, is it North Beach Boutique? Shout out to Wollongong North Beach Boutique. I told them that I was getting a dress for a photo shoot. And then halfway through, she's like, you're eloping, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. I don't even know who my husband is. That's how much I'm eloping. But yeah, love the pink dress. Such a beautiful, like, I never felt nervous. Like, even going into it, never felt nervous, never felt scared. I just felt like this is the right thing to do. This is what I'm doing. This is the right thing to do. And yeah, wedding was amazing. And I feel like everyone saw the connection with Duncan and I. Like, you could feel it. Yeah. You could, when he turned around, it was just like instant sparks. Yeah. And it was just really easy and we got along really well. There was a medical incident that happened on set at our wedding. And so the ambulance had to be called and we had to all be separated. And so I was literally inside this giant house, separated from literally everyone for like 3 hours. So our wedding actually got cut short.
Really?
Yeah, because of the medical episode. And so, yeah, we only had maybe like an hour, I want to say, to do like the whole reception.
No way.
Yeah, so we had no time. None.
That's hectic.
And it was freezing cold.
Because it was in Byron?
It was in Byron. Yeah, it was so damn cold. And they wouldn't let me have a blanket. And Duncan didn't give me his coat because he was cold too. So they were literally shoving heat packs down my dress because I was like turning blue, shivering. And they had a heater on the ground behind Duncan and I, which we were at like the head of the table. And I was leaning over, like talking to my mom or talking to my best friend Brad or something. And all of a sudden, one of the camera guys is like, "Your dress is on fire."
I cannot believe this happened. When you told me, I was like, wait, what?
Can you guys please, like, can someone send me that photo, the footage, the real footage of my dress being on fire? So, like, it was all tulle, so it wasn't actually fire, but it was smoking. Yeah. And it just all, like, melted and shriveled up, which is so sad because the dress is totally ruined. It wasn't, like, in flames. I think Duncan had said in an interview, he like turned to me and he's like, "You're smoking." And I was like, that never happened. It was a cameraman that was like, "Your dress is on fire." And so, yeah, they had to take away the heater. And so then I froze even more the rest of the night. But the night was so beautiful. Even like all of us just had like 1 degree of separation because Duncan and I live so close together in the Northern Beaches. So had like the same friend group. Everyone kind of knew each other in some weird way. It was almost like a big party with like all of our friends. It was such a good time. And also what they didn't show at the wedding was that I told him about Leon on the wedding day. Of course, excuse me, on the wedding day. And they didn't show that. So then all of a sudden I think they started talking about me having a child when it was family day when my mom came, and everyone's like, why didn't Alyssa tell him about her child beforehand? And I'm like, guys, I did. I literally told him on the wedding. So that was weird.
What was his reaction when you told him about it?
He was fine.
Yeah, he was fine about it?
He was fine about it. Look, I don't think he... Oh, what do I want to say? I think Duncan always knew what was the right thing to say.
Sure.
So for me, meeting him for this first time, he was saying all the right things.
Of course.
We were getting along really well. So it was just like, oh my God, is this too good to be true? Like, where's the red flags? Like, what is happening? Why is this too good? Why is he literally saying everything right? And even my mom was like, what is like what's wrong? You know what I mean? Like, what's wrong with him? He seems so perfect. And she also did a face reading for him on the day. Really? And so I need her to, shout out to Deb again. I think she's going to do like a MAFS series where she does like all the face reading of birth numbers for everyone, because it's so iconic about things that she picks up on. But yeah, he was like, it's not a problem for me. Like, you know, I have a lot of friends that have kids, and it's just like a part of life. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, that's really strange, because I was always like a bit insecure that, you know, why is a 37-year-old man that's never been married and doesn't have kids, why would he want to date a single mom?
Yeah. And I remember I had raised that a few times in the experiment. I was like, oh, it just is just something to note.
Yeah. That was literally my mom's red flag for him, is that he hadn't been married and that he didn't have children. So it might be hard for him to understand, you know, what I'm going through.
Because I always got, and again, it never was shown, but I always got a party boy vibe from Duncan. And I feel like a lot of people wouldn't agree with that, but I just always saw that. I was like, okay, well, it makes sense. Like, if he's, you know, been single, dating, whatever, like, I didn't really get much, I never really had that kind of deep connection with him. So I didn't really know if he had like long-term relationships or like, you know, was even close to getting married or having a child or whatever it was. And I always was like, the rational explanation would be he's a party boy. Yeah. And he'd said, like, he told me a couple of stories of like partying with like certain celebrities and stuff. So I was like, okay, yeah, he's a party boy. That's what he's been doing. He's living the bachelor lifestyle. And that's always the vibe I got from him. And my hesitations about him to Alyssa was that. And I'd always shared, I was like, I just think he's a party boy, and I don't know if he's ready to let go of that. Maybe he is. Maybe he's coming here and he's like, yep, I'm putting that behind me. But I always had that energy from him, and I just never could let that go. I was like, I think that's just his vibe. Like, that's just the lifestyle he wants to to live.
And I think I say that quite often in my journal when I was reading it back, is that we live such different lives outside of the experiment. Like, how is that ever going to intertwine? So that was a reservation of mine, is like, is he ready to, you know, settle down and like step into, you know, a parenting role or like being a role model for Leon? Another question I got a lot was like, did Duncan ever meet Leon? And absolutely not. I will protect my child for the rest of my life, and I will not ever introduce Leon to somebody that A, I've met on a TV show, and B, that I'm not going to introduce him to anybody until I know that it's the real thing and it's a real deal.
And I always defended you with that, because it's like, obviously, as you progress in a relationship, he would eventually meet your child. But it was just wild to expect that would happen so quickly. And that's why I was so confused when the sentiment came out of being like, oh, well, why wouldn't she have him meet her child and they would hang out together? And I was like, but you don't want your child meeting all these, like, meeting men you're dating without it.
You don't want them to get attached, and you don't want to ask questions. And that's why I copped a lot of flack of like, oh, you're a part-time wife every Wednesday and every other weekend, which is wrong. I can't
with the every like, seriously.
It's actually every Wednesday and Thursday, and then every other weekend. So if we can just get that straight, that'd be great. But like, I don't know if they showed this, but when we had the homestays with his sister kind of put that to light as well. His sister was like, oh, it's just temporary. This part-time stuff is just temporary until Alyssa feels comfortable enough in your progression in your relationship has moved far enough to where she feels comfortable to meet Leon.
Yeah.
And sorry, that's valid. Could you
And
imagine?
I like your sister. She's very reasonable. I feel like she's
great.
very fair.
She was so kind to me. So kind to me. And yeah, I have a lot of love for her. So Renee is just, she's a real one. She's definitely been through a lot. She's older. Yeah. So he's the youngest. Has 2 older sisters, and she has an amazing soul, a great heart.
Yeah, I always found it so hard seeing what was portrayed on the show, because even when it comes to like, I would like back up Alyssa a lot, or I would share my reservations, and obviously it's never shown. And I feel like that obviously then adds to the narrative of you being this like, you're overthinking, he's perfect, you're crazy, you're spiraling, all of this stuff. And I always found it very fair, your reasons to why you felt the way you felt.
Yep.
So it was hard to see people comment like all this stuff like, oh, well, Alyssa's sabotaging, which I feel like in an essence you did do 100%.
Yes. I'll admit that. I am a self-sabotager. I would go to Self-Sabotaging
queens.
Anonymous. And I do self-sabotage. And, you know, there's a lot of things in my diary that I was reading where it was like, Alyssa, like, stop self-sabotaging, like, lean in, trust it, like, just let go and lean in, I think was one of my biggest things that my mom kept saying is, you know, stop thinking about, you don't have to have all the answers, you know, moving forward, but just like lean in and just really give it your all. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. And, you know, there was a few things that I felt weren't shown, which showcased my insecurities, which kind of started my insecurities. And I feel like that's such a big thing to not show. For example, on the honeymoon, when you get our honesty box, which they never even showed our honesty box. They didn't show any of it. And one of the questions was like, oh, what does your partner need to know about you in a relationship? And Duncan had said, I have too high expectations of my partners. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, well, what are your expectations? He's like, well, I don't know. I can't really put them like into words. I just know I have too high expectations. And I was like, well, fuck, that makes me feel insecure. Like, how do I know I'm ever going to be good enough when I already am thinking that, you know, I have a lot that comes on my plate in a relationship with me? And then when it came to confessions week, and his confession was, I have too high expectations of my partners, and that's why I've broken up with them. And I was like, hold on a second. That is not a confession to me, because you just told me this. And like, now I feel even more insecure. And they showed that clip at reunion, but then they never showed it on TV. So I'm like, they wanted to show it at reunion in front of us, so I would feel that a type of way and start breaking down again. So they would get that reaction from me and then not show it. Yeah. And so that was really hard. That's kind of where, you know, I started stemming my insecurities from, was him saying that, you know, I have too high expectations. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, tell me. I wanted to work through it with him, right? Because I really liked him. Yeah. Really liked him from the get-go. We got along so well. We had so much fun together. You know, I think you can be a testament to this as well, because a lot of the times in our free time, a lot of the couples wouldn't hang out with each other. But like Duncan and I, we would spend all the time we could together, and we had so much fun. And so I was like, I want to be enough for him. How am I going to be enough? I want to be enough. I want to do as much as I can, so, you know, he will like me. And that feels very like pick me, but it definitely started my insecurities with him of having that. And then so we got into a big fight on confessions week, because I was like, how is that a confession? Like, I just gave you a real confession. And then I actually felt quite bad that I judged him for that, because he was like, Alyssa, like, this has come from like, you know, the depths of my soul, and this is a really big thing for me to have to share, come to terms with, is that it was a me problem, not a my girlfriend problem. And I was like, hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me. Like, that's kind of what it was giving me. But then I felt quite bad, because I was like, you know, I can't judge him for, you know, him having that confession and me having a different confession. So we kind of worked that out. And that was a really good thing about Duncan and I, is our communication was really spot on. Like, he listened to me, I listened to him. That's not something that I had in a partner before, that would kind of sit down and workshop things through. And so when things started to change with our communication style was at retreat. Yeah. Retreat, I felt, was the spiral catalyst of it really turning for Alyssa. And I think that's when we spoke and we're like, don't watch the show anymore. Yeah, like, it was just, it just really kind of
flipped, and I couldn't really make sense of it because obviously having the experience with you leading up to those weeks and then seeing how it was at retreat, it was so confusing. But I think we wanted to give some context on retreat because I feel like that episode, I reckon you probably copped the most hate.
That's when viewers were like, nah, she's crazy.
And that's when the iconic, I need attention.
I need attention. Give me attention. I need attention.
I would like to say, guys, because clearly she was saying, what do you want me to say? I need attention. And then they just cut, I need attention, and make it look like she's saying, I need attention.
Thanks.
Like, to me, that's just so obvious of what that was. But, that just really sends me because it's just ridiculous. But, guys, I witnessed that argument.
She was in the
I was
next
the only
room.
witness. They were, I think there was a couple of us, there was 3 of us upstairs, right? It was me, Ollie, you, Duncan, Lyndall, Cam. I was doing my makeup in the room next door, so I heard the whole thing. So my shock seeing how it aired was like, whoa, because that's not the conversation I heard and it's not how it went down. I feel like I was almost about to like chime in because I just felt like Duncan was being really intense towards you, and it's just crazy how that wasn't shown, but then the bits that were shown was you being crazy. But I feel like it was very much like...
It was tit for tat.
Yeah, it was tit for tat. And I think that wasn't really shown in that way. But I think just rewinding, Duncan went into that retreat saying that it was going to be a nice time for you two, spending time with just you two alone.
This was on camera as well, which they never showed. So producers asked us, hey guys, what's the vibe? What's going to be the vibe? I hate that. What's the vibe? What's the vibe? Like, what's going to be the vibe at the couples retreat? And I was like, oh, it'll be boys club and then the girls. Like, it's always every dinner party. Like, it's always the boys.
It's
like, Duncan's very much a boys boy, which I loved about him, that he had like a really close group knit friend. How am I trying to say this? A very close knit group of boys that he like grew up with, and I loved that. I loved that he had a great group of guy friends, but he was always for the boys, like always for the boys. And so I was like, oh, it'll be boys club versus girls, and he's like, he does that whole like, he's like, oh, well, if I'm going on a couples retreat with my partner, I would expect that I would be with my partner. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. Like, I was like fully expecting, you to go hang out with the boys and I'd be with the girls, which I was fine with. Yeah. But then he set that expectation of, no, I want to be with you.
Context. This was also when there was still a little bit of like awkward divide amongst the girls. Yeah. So we were kind of like navigating through what that was, and I think that's why I added context to you being like, it's boys separately, girls separately. Yes, it was like still awkward because there was just a bit of tension within the girls. So it was a bit like, there's a lot that's going to be popping off here, and which it obviously did.
So we got into retreat that morning. Remember we were sprinting as well to try to find.
Alyssa and I were literally sprinting in
all of my snacks.
I love
I'm
that.
Sprinting trying to find, because at retreat, I don't know if the new MAFS cast watch this. What you do when you go into the house, you go outside to the left. And that's where the back
that room
little
is.
house is. So there's 2 houses. There's like a separate house and then like a big house. So outside to the left, that's where you need to go. So we played like some bocce ball and, played a few things, and then he was gone. And I was like, oh, what the hell? Like, where did Duncan go? And Bronte and I even had a walk, because she was like, where are the boys? Where are the boys? And I was like, yeah, I know. So we even went for a walk, and she was like, I just feel like they've ditched us. And I was like, yeah, bro, me too. And I'm trying to like remember, was it the first night? Did we get there in the afternoon and then have it like a dinner party?
We had like that like sitting down situation around the barrels.
Yes,
that was that first night.
Yes, okay. So this was the second morning then. So the first night we get there, everything was good. There was a bit of drama with like, remember Taylor and Bronte. Yeah. Like there was just a whole bunch of things popping off that night. And then the next morning, like we wake up, Duncan and I are all good. And then, I don't see him for the rest of the day. And so then when they're like, oh, it's girls' night, I was like, yeah, girls' night. And they made us like run through all the boys. And Duncan like grabbed me and like pulled me away. And he's like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, well, I need to go get ready for girls' night. He's like, no, I need to speak to you. And I was like, okay. And I remember even like having lunch that day. I like went and sat down, and he like walked in and like didn't even say hello. And he like went and grabbed lunch and then came and sat down.
Yeah, because you made a comment of this, because Ollie came, I think I was eating, and Ollie came and said something. He came and sat with us for a little bit, or he
Yeah.
came and said something to me, and you were like, oh, see, like, why isn't Duncan just like acknowledging me at all?
He wouldn't even say hello to me. He literally did not even acknowledge me. We played a few games in the morning, and then he was gone. And then I didn't see him literally for the rest of the day. At lunchtime, we had like a small like pass by comment, and I was like, what did I do? Like, have I done something wrong? Why is he not paying any attention to me? But like, really, I was like, he can't even come like give me a kiss and say, hey babe, like, how's it going? What are you guys up to? Like, just the acknowledgement. And then I was like, what the hell? And then he like went off to play tennis the rest of the day. And so then when we had like the girls' day, when they said, oh, it's girls' night, boys' night, I like kind of walked past him because producers were like filming us, like cheering and like running through the boys. And then he was like, no, we need to speak. And that's where the whole conversation happened when I was getting ready. And before this, like, I think that weekend before, we had kind of spoken about his past relationships, and he said one of his ex-girlfriends would get upset that on the weekends, he would make plans with the boys, and then she would get upset because she wasn't invited and he didn't make plans with her. And I was like, well, I get that. Like, I would get upset too. Like, in a normal world, you work a 9-to-5 job, and so on the weekend is kind of the time that you spend with your partner.
Totally.
And so if you know, are having a conversation with your boyfriend, you're like, hey, what are you up to this weekend? And he's like, oh, I'm with the boys. It's like, well, what about me?
Yeah.
And so I already had that a bit of insecurity.
Sure.
And so when I was talking to him about it, I was like, why don't you just at least like come check in on me and just like say, hey, what are you doing? Like, do you want to go do something? He's like, well, why can't you just check in on me? And it was very tit for tat. And so what you don't see is me just spitting these things and him rebuttaling, but they don't have him rebuttaling. They just have him like this.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm like, that's not how it happened. So then it made me look like a liar when I go to girls' night. And I'm telling them this conversation, and everyone's like, that's not how the conversation went.
Like, yes,
and
it
I'm
was.
like, guys,
I was there.
This was an hour conversation that you saw 30 seconds of. And that was the other thing. He's like, what do you want? What do you want, Alyssa? And I was like, what do you want me to tell you? Like, you want me to tell you that I need attention?
Yeah.
I need attention. And that's where that came from. And then when he's like, do you need a hug? And I'm like, no,
obviously not.
Like,
obviously not.
I'm the kind of person where if I had just had an argument, do not touch me unless you don't ask.
I'm the same.
Like, if he would have just came up and like put his arms around me and like hugged it out, I would have like melted into that. But when you ask me, can I give you a hug? Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not. Like, let me be angry for a second. I have a camera in my face. I'm trying to get ready. Like, there's
and you
so
had
much
the
going
shittest
on.
room. You
The
guys had the
shittest room. I was so angry about that. I dropped the ball on that one, Duncan. I'm very sorry for picking the shittest room. I was trying to get the best one for us, and then I ended up getting the shittest one. But I was so over it at that point. I was so exhausted. I hadn't had my phone in like 2 days. And normally when we have normal filming days, we get a lot of breaks throughout the day. So I had to literally ask production, can I have my phone? They're like, why do you need it? And I'm like, to check in to see if my child's okay. Like, what do you mean? I have a child. And so I kept having to ask them. And so I was so over it at that point. And then like our conversation style was broken. Yeah. And I was like, normally I'm able to go to Duncan and be like, hey, I'm feeling this type of way. And he would sit down and he would hear me and he would listen to me and he would work it out. But for whatever reason, it was just tit for tat. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because like I was telling things that he wasn't happy with. There was a conversation where I was like, you know, why didn't you come check in on me? And he's like, why didn't you check in on me? And I'm like, well, I didn't know where you were. And he's like, it's not that big of a place, Alyssa. What do you mean you didn't know where I was? And I was like, well, I'm not going to go up to you playing tennis with the boys. Like, that's really like, it's very intimidating. He's like, so you did know where I was?
You were simply saying you going up to a group setting with the boys. You weren't being like, that's where you were. Like,
I'm not going to go up to all the manly men, you know, playing tennis, like having this them as well. Huge tournament.
Literally, like, they would way too into it.
Give me attention. Give me attention. And so he felt and he even had said,
I think he felt very attacked. Like, he felt
very attacked. And that was not my intent at all. I was just saying, you know, if we're out at a bar, and I think he used example as well, like if we're out at a bar, we check in on each other. It's not anyone's job. And like, this is such a minute thing to even talk about. Like, why are we even talking about like checking in on each other? Like, that's a bare minimum. If you walk past somebody and it's your girlfriend, you say hello and you give them a kiss. Whether we're in a group setting or not, this is the first time I had seen him in a big group setting. And I just think that it was very obvious that it was very a boy's boy. And I think they highlighted that as well when they showed Retreat, when they were like showing the boys painting nails and doing tennis and like all of the girls just kind of by themselves, which is fine. But like, just set that expectation.
Yeah.
Set the expectation. Because the expectation was set that we were going to be spending time with each other, that's what it came down to. And then with Duncan, he's very logical. So he drills into the fact of, okay, so let's look at this and it's in a time frame. I spent an hour and a half with you in the morning playing bocce ball, and then half an hour playing with the whistle ball thing. And then was that not enough time for you? And I'm just like, you're missing the point. Please, you're missing the point. I'm just saying that I am feeling like I haven't seen you all day and I'm feeling shut out. I'm feeling like not a priority, probably the same feeling that your ex-girlfriend had. And that's insecure for me as well. At this point, we hadn't really spoken about time outside the experiment as well. And this was like pretty far in to the extent, this is halfway through.
Yep.
And so I was like, is this how it's going to be when like I'm, you know, with Leon on the weekends or, you know, every few days, like I'm just not going to hear from him.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening. So every weekend I would go home and I wouldn't hear anything from Duncan, nothing, until I got back on the Monday.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I spoke to him and was like, hey, you know, I feel kind of like left out and a bit shut out on the weekend when I'm with Leon and like I don't hear anything from you. Like I'll send him a text message and it'll take him like 6 hours to respond. And I was like, is that how it's going to be? Like I feel like communication between somebody needs to be really strong when you're away from each other because that's how you keep the connection.
Totally.
I will say he did start to reach out to me more on the weekends once I brought it up. So that was good. But there was still just like little things where I'm like, oh, I just, in my gut, just didn't feel right.
I will say there was one moment, and I think it was over the weekend when I'd messaged you, and I was like, so context, guys, we're not allowed to hang out with each other off camera. You're only allowed to hang out with your partner off camera. So it can be really hard building those friendships or building anything because you're just not allowed to. And part of me respects it in terms of the process of production and having those relationships on camera.
We got in so much trouble.
Oh, dude.
Because the cheating scandal happened off camera.
Everything happened off camera.
Everything happened either butt dial.
Yeah. So it was really... it was really hard, but there was one weekend and I had been invited to Duncan and Alyssa's room. Obviously, Alyssa was with her child and there were a few people in there, Evelyn and Rupert. And I was like, hey, I can't remember what I even said to you, but I'd obviously reached out to him. I was like, hey, like there's some people in your room. Like I'm not sure if you know.
Yes.
And
this is at like 12 o'clock in the morning as well.
Yeah, it was pretty
midnight.
late. Yeah, I think it was, I don't know what it was. Because we had a curfew. So I think it was after people had come out.
It was definitely after curfew.
Yeah.
Should we pull up the message?
Yeah, pull up the message.
Pull it up.
But basically, yeah, I was like to listen. I kind of thought she did know, but I was just trying to like be like, hey, like just so you know, like this is happening. And to her knowledge,
I did not know that there was people in your room is what I'm going to search. But yeah, basically what I did, I'm going to read these messages as well from Duncan because I feel like this is really telling as far as like what I was going through. Look, I want to preface this by saying I don't think mine and Duncan's relationship was toxic, but I have been love bombed before by previous partners, and this is exactly how I feel like this is love bombing. We can leave it up to the people in the comments if you guys let me know if this is love bombing or not. So I messaged him, oh, this is cute, just before this. He's like, having a drink at Opera Bar with Rupert, me and Rupes having a drink together.
But dial night.
Ollie just turned up. No Leighton, though. I really like Ollie. Good guy. Good morals. He talks lovingly about Tahnee. Aww. Smiley face. Duncan never uses emojis as well, which I think is like a red flag. I said, oh, that's sweet. Love her so much. 12:30 in the morning. Are you awake? No response. 12:31. What's going on, Duncan? That's my brain, right?
You're thinking.
When I hear he's had a big night with the boys,
yep,
and now I've heard that there's people in my room. What's going on? He's not responding. This is my trauma response, right? I have been cheated on in the past. I have been lied to in the past, and that's just something that I will jump to conclusions, which again, self-sabotage, jump to conclusions. Don't do it like I do it. Just don't do it. So he responds an hour and a half later, 1:52 a.m. I'm awake, about to go to sleep now. I miss you. I know this sounds strange, but I miss how you smell. You are my woman. I said, I have nothing to say to you right now. I feel sick to my stomach. He goes, why? I've done nothing but care for you and love you. That's how I feel about you. Heart eye emoji. To me, that's love bombing. To me, I had asked, what are you doing? Are you awake? What's going on? I wanted him to be like, I just had people in the room. Or like if there's people over in your room, in my apartment, just whip out your phone. Like he was
Yeah,
throughout the night, he was like, oh, Ollie's here now. Oh, Leighton's here now.
Know why he
and
didn't
then
share
all
that
of a
with
sudden
you
you go home to our apartment where all of my stuff is. There's people over. Why wouldn't you just whip out your phone and be like, hey, by the way, back in the room, so-and-so is here.
Yeah.
It would just...
Or send like a selfie with the... I don't know. I just feel like that would be something I would be talking to my partner about.
Any sort of communication. If I lived in an apartment with somebody and he was out and I had people over, I would flip him a text just out of respect and say, hey, just so you know, these people are here.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not for me to like know his whereabouts or know what's happening, but it's just a weird experiment. It's just a weird thing with what we're living in. And like, I don't know, like all my stuff was there. I just felt a bit weird about it.
Yeah. No, I didn't like people coming in my room, especially because you'd have producers and random people coming in your room. I didn't like it.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
And so when the love bombing thing happened, I was like, who's at our apartment tonight? He said, Roops and Evelyn. And already I was like, I didn't respond. And I was like, that just makes me feel a bit sick because Evelyn's super hot, okay? She is so attractive. She, for me, is cookie cutter Duncan's type.
Totally.
So when she came in, I was like, oh shit, this bitch about to steal my man.
Yeah. Which
So yeah, I already felt a type of way about her. And this was the first week that they were there. So I didn't really know who they were, what they were doing, what the vibe was. I just felt a little bit betrayed that he didn't tell me people were over at our house.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt really upset about it. And I remember coming back to the apartment. I think that was on a Friday or Saturday night. Had it been a Saturday night. And then, yeah, I didn't come back until the Monday because I messaged producers and I was like, I was ready to quit.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to come back. I was meant to come back on the Sunday and I was like, no, I'm going to spend another night at home. For me, it was like, I am leaning so much into this and I just feel like that he's just a party boy.
Yeah.
And he just wants to go out and about, which is fine. There's nothing
That's
wrong
not
with being a party
lifestyle.
boy.
Yeah.
But that's just not really, I'm all here for a good night out.
Totally.
We know that. Mom's gone wild.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for me. Like
Yeah.
the communication wasn't there. I just felt like I was being lied to. I just, again, in my gut, I just felt like something was off. And so, yeah, I didn't come home until the next day. And then we had a chat. And, you know, again, our communication was good. He kind of told me and he was like, yeah, okay, I respect that, you know, I should have told you. But then he kind of got a bit upset. He was like, so what do you want me to do? Like, do you just, like, don't you trust me?
It's just so funny because I remember that commitment ceremony. Alyssa got dragged for getting upset that Evelyn and Rupert were in her room,
Which
and
was
it's
never
just
shown.
It's never shown. But it's because I was dragged into that because obviously I was the one that told Alyssa. But it just was so funny because like the insecurity that you felt, obviously something your gut was telling you, I need to feel a type of way about this. And now it's like seeing the events of them now being together. It's like something was telling you that it made you uncomfortable and rightly so. And I feel, which we'll talk about couple swap because that's when things kind of felt a bit icky to me. Yeah, it was just interesting seeing that you were then criticized to jump into conclusions and not trusting your partner and all of this, but also it's like, it's so hard because like I would feel the same way. Like if Ollie, and I think partly because you're breaking the rules and we're not meant to, and you need to know whether you need a cover for him or whatever it is.
That was the other
breaking the rules.
He got upset at me because production didn't know that they were over there. So when I got back, the house AP knew that I was really upset. House AP, if you guys don't know, we have assistant producers.
Like in-house,
that like are our babysitters basically. They are beautiful. I love them so much.
Beck and Hamish, shout out.
Yes, shout out Beck and Hamish. I miss you. So when I got back, Beck saw that I was really upset. She's like, hey, you okay? And I just broke down crying. She's like, come in my room. And so I told her everything. And she's like, Evelyn and Rupert were in Duncan's room.
Straight away, she's like, who's breaking the rules?
Like, oh, shit. So she made me do a video diary. So if you don't, we call them voxies.
Yeah.
Basically like an interview with the camera. And if there's no cameras around, you kind of have to document it yourself. So she's like, let's use this because this is going to be like a big part of the storyline, which is what we were thinking. And so, yeah, I was just like, you know, I feel a bit upset that, you know, my partner had like a big night out and I didn't hear from him until 1:30 in the morning and then 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I get love bombed and I'm like, I've been through that before and I don't want to go through that again. So, and then I get criticized on the couch for saying that I don't trust my partner. And does he expect, you know, every second of me not being there with him for me to say, like, who's at his house? Like, no, that's not. It's a completely different scenario. It's a different circumstance. We live together. We have our apartment. These people were brand new to the experiment. All you had to do is whip out your phone and be like he was doing the whole rest of the night.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, Rupert and Evelyn are here. I'd be like,
he was doing it. That's why it didn't make sense, because he was doing that leading up to this point.
Yes.
And then the second they came
same
over,
night.
that hour and a half break, like, I don't like that. I don't like that.
Me either. I felt some type of way, and now we know why.
Yeah, so let's
Should
get
we talk about
into
wife swap?
couple swap, wife swap. So that was part 1 of my chat with Alyssa. We covered quite a few topics, but our next part will really go into more detail of the couple swap, where her head was at during those last few weeks on the show, final vows, and her view on Evelyn and Duncan's relationship. Don't forget to follow @ChuffedPod on Instagram and TikTok, and stay tuned for next week's episode.